fine-tuned. And I'll tell you what to do to enable us to do this very easily and quickly. First of all, going through a metal detector, so don't bring any knives or keys. A few coins in your pocket aren't going to hurt anything, but anything big, leave it on the bus.
Good.
You can bring your ink pen's not going to be a problem. Keep your name tags and your radios on. What's normally going to happen is they're going to see we're a group. Have your name tag showing, and when they see that you're a group, they're going to let us go right through. Usually, most of the time, they'll still make you put your camera on the side. You go through and you turn around, pick up your cameras. Here we are entering the dung gate into the western wall, and our group all goes down to pray, and I give a few talks before we go into the actual western wall. I'll explain to you what you're seeing briefly, then the women will follow Janet in, the men will follow me into the men's section. Men will have to have their heads covered. Any hat that you have is sufficient. I see a lot of very good head coverings here. If you don't have one, they will have yarmulkes for you at the entrance. I'll point them out as we go down into the men's section. Women, it doesn't matter if you have your heads covered or uncovered. Either way is fine. That's a good one. That black hat with a cross is fine. Don't worry. That'll be fine. And then we'll stay down in the women and men's section 10 minutes, give you a chance to go up and touch the wall and pray. Don't be shy, that's good. Go right up to the wall, pray, touch the wall. You have every freedom to be there. And then we'll come back out together and get on the bus and come back to the hotel. The walls were here. He saw these with his own eyes. And there was a huge temple over 7 stories high, glistening with gold and just the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen. And when the Romans came, they destroyed that temple, and the Jews were kicked out, and basically the Jews did not have access to this wall for 2,000 years until 1967. After the Six-Day War, they took over East Jerusalem, and they again came here, and they were wailing at this wall for joy that they came back to the holiest place on the face of the earth. Why is it the holiest? Because the temple stood there. This is where God dwelled. You never go down to Jerusalem. Even if you're coming from a helicopter, you're still going up to Jerusalem, because this is where God dwells, the highest place on the face of the earth for the Jewish people. Now, people always ask me, well, I thought not one stone was going to be left upon another. Why are all those stones still there in a wall? I'll tell you why. That was not part of the temple. What Herod did, if you can imagine, if you look up here, the Temple Mount, this is Mount Moriah where Abraham offered his son. It was a mountain like this. And Solomon built his temple on top of that mountain, on top of the tip of that. When Herod came here, he wanted to make it very profound, so what he did is he built a retaining wall all the way around that mountain. So now the top of the mountain's here, and the wall, retaining wall, and he filled it all in, so it's a big flat surface the size of 33 football fields up there called Temple Mount. That's the size of that platform that Herod built. 33 football fields, that's pretty impressive. It goes all the way, keeps on going way, way, way down that way and all the way over there. You saw the other side from Gethsemane. Remember the Golden Gate? That's the other side. That's the eastern wall. Then when he got the platform built, Herod built a 7-story temple up on top of that. When the Romans came, they destroyed the temple, but this is all still part of the retaining wall, which wasn't knocked down, obviously. That wall, you're only seeing part of it because it actually is twice as high as that. It goes down even further. So when Jesus was here, that wall was even more impressive, and the ramps going up that's why the Jews are so proud. It was just magnificent. The temple had big clusters of golden grapes the size of a man hanging off the front. You could see that thing gleaming for miles away, and they were so proud of it. That's why even when people were convinced Jesus was the Messiah, they only saw him as a threat, because if people began to follow him, they said Rome will come and take our place away. They were more proud of that than anything. Even if they have to kill the Messiah to keep that, they will. But they ended up losing it anyway. There are 2 stones in that wall as you go in farther. You can't see them. Each stone weighs, where's our pilot? Right here. Each stone of those 2 stones weighs the same as 2 747s fully loaded.
A couple million pounds.
That's how much the stone weighs. 2 of them in one stone. How did Herod? He was an unbelievable engineer to get stones like that in place before you had hydraulics and before you had cranes and all the things that we have today. Now this is the men's section over here. The women go down here. That's their section. People ask what this is going up this wooden thing. This is a ramp that takes you up to the top of Temple Mount. We do that on Holy Land Part 2. We don't have time to do it on Holy Land Part 1 because there's just so many things to do and see, as you can tell. But if we, on Holy Land Part 2, we get in line only certain parts of the day because it can get kind of hot up there because that's the Muslim property. That's where they have their mosque and their Dome of the Rock shrine. And up there's a lot of times, you know, scuffles and so on, and the Jews have to close it down and they have to, you know, stop things. Whenever you hear on the Western Wall that there's a problem, usually it's because the Jews are down here praying, the Muslims get upset about something, and they're up there and they start chucking rocks down onto the Jews. And then they have to clear the place out, and they go up and they chase all the Muslims out, and they shut everything down for a day going on. Pretty soon the police were called and the rabbis were called, and there was a big argument. And if you watch our movie, Paul Contending for the Faith, you'll see it behind the scenes, you'll see it happening, because our video guy was smart enough with another one to stand back and get it with a small video. And the argument got very heated, and finally that guy would not get away from my camera. So I said to him, okay, here's what we're going to do. You know, quite loudly I said it to him. Here's what I'm going to do. I am a Gentile, you are a Jew. If you don't get away from my camera, I'm going to touch you. He would be defiled to have a Gentile touch him. So he backed away from my camera, and we pulled it, moved it to another spot, and continued filming. When we were done, I never leave bridges burned behind me. I never leave bad attitudes. Even if I argue or something with people, I always go back and make sure that there's no harm done. And I went to shake his hand, and I'll find somebody here. Father, you do it with me. I went to shake his hand, and he went like this. Go to shake hands with me. He went like this because he wouldn't touch my skin. So he would only touch the cloth, but he wouldn't touch my skin. Because to touch my skin, he would still be tomei, which means he's defiled. He'd have to go do cleansing baths before the Sabbath. So the religious Jews today are still like the Pharisees in many ways. And they think they're very righteous, and they won't be with Gentiles, and it's still very much like it was back in the old days. There's a lot of different kinds of hats, and if you came down here to touch the Torah scroll, because to them that's as sacred as the Eucharist is to us. In fact, they have a tabernacle in front of their synagogue too, and that's called a tabernacle, and in there is the Word of God in flesh, just like we have in our tabernacle the Word of God in flesh. But for them, the Word of God in flesh is the Torah, the words of God, which He wrote with His own finger, and they put that in there. You don't touch that any more than I'd go into the tabernacle and mess around with the bread and wine in their Father. They would never do that because that's the Word of God in flesh, so to speak. But once the boys at 13, they get to bring the Torah scroll out. Some of them are $300,000. They're still on vellum, animal skins, handwritten, and they'll bring them out here and they'll dance with those, the Torah scroll. The Torah gives them such joy. The Word of God is their joy. And the boy, for the first time, reads the Torah scroll out loud to all of the men down there, to his father and his rabbi and grandfather and uncles. And this is like confirmation for them. This is where he's confirmed. He's bar mitzvah. He's now a man, an adult Jew, no longer a little boy who says, I have to go to synagogue because mommy and daddy make me go to synagogue. Now he's a Jew of his own, and he goes because he will die for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob after his bar mitzvah. He's ready. And don't you think confirmation should be like that at home when you're It's not just a little ceremony. They should know that it's no, you now go to Mass because you are an adult Christian, and you have to be ready to die for Jesus Christ, or you're not ready to be confirmed. I had a boy one time who asked me if I'd be his sponsor, and I said no because I travel too much. And his mom said, just meet with him one time. I said, okay. When he was coming to my house, I knew I had to make an impression on this boy for confirmation. So I just finished my movie, Apostolic Fathers, and I had bought a big sword, a real sword, not a plaything, and I had not like those Knights of Columbus used. This is a real sword, and I had a Roman helmet. When I knew the boy was coming over, I put the Roman helmet on. I put that sword on the scabbard, a big 4-foot sword, and Janet put a red blanket around it, pinned it on one shoulder. I looked like a Roman centurion. And when that kid came up my steps, I jumped out at him out of the shadows. I waited on my porch in the shadows. When he came out, I jumped out of the shadows, and I said, Matthew, and I rushed at him, and I took the sword, and I pushed him up against my house, and I said, are you ready to die for Jesus Christ right now? If not, you're not ready to be. If you're not ready to die for Jesus, you're not ready for confirmation, and don't waste my time. I'm a busy man. Are you ready to die for Jesus, Matthew? He goes, I will, I do, I can. and his parents in the car, their eyes went like, oh my goodness. And they said that boy talked about what confirmation was and that sword for the next 6 months to everybody he talked about. Father, you need to get a sword in your parish. But I think that this is what this boy, he gets confirmed. They march him in from the street with the ram's horns like this. Do you think you're ever going to convert that boy away from Judaism anytime soon? Are you kidding? Not ever. And I think we ought to make much more of confirmation in our churches. March him through the street. Start on Main Street and march all the way to the church and let him be pronounced into everybody in town. He's now an adult Christian and he's going to mass because he wants to. Anyway, here's our guys coming down to the Western Wall to pray. Massive wall. There's a lot of Jews here today praying. Come on up, guys. Don't be shy.